Yeah.
In my past life, for a long time, I was a children's librarian. Thank you. Thank you. We have some librarians in the audience. And children. And when we had a break in the children's library, we would do things like a stretch. So I'd like you to all stand up if you'd like to and stretch your arms and your legs while our friends are getting ready to tell you a story about my favorite hero, Elijah. So take a stretch. And if you have something to tell your friend that you couldn't tell while the people were performing, do that. Meanwhile, I'm keeping a close look at the back because I have a story to tell you. So take a nice big stretch. Okay. And now have a seat because the break is over. You know, when you study Jewish folk tales, you often find that there's nothing Jewish about them. There's no mention of rabbis or anything else. But that doesn't mean that Jews didn't love them. And here is a very brief story from Morocco that was adapted from Pinchas Seda's The Worm's Complaint. And it goes like this. God and the worms. The Lord has quite an ear, it said. He listens to us all. He had to bend way down one day to hear one very small. The worms are not too happy, God, with your eternal plan. For once you promised lots of meat on every buried man. But people worry so about death, they wear themselves to sticks. That you have not been faithful is the bone we have to pick. So God invented money to turn each mind to dough, to grow so rich, to own so much is all that man had to know. It took their minds off dying and made them rather fat. And now the worms are satisfied, and that's the end of that. The end. Elijah becomes a slave. This story, the next story, comes from Tunisia and includes episodes from the Babylonian Talmud. It is adapted from Howard Schwartz's The Three Tasks of Elijah, found in his book Miriam's Tambourine, Jewish Folktales from Around the World. Presenting Elijah Becomes a Slave. The prophet Elijah is a man of many disguises. Each of his disguises has but one purpose: to help a poor or suffering Jew.
Why, look at that tumble-down house. I wonder who lives in it.
Suddenly, the door to the house opened, and a poor woman dressed in rags emerged. My Lord, are my eyes seeing things, or are you the prophet Elijah?
You guessed right, my good woman. I am not in disguise today.
Oh, do allow me to call my husband. He'll be so glad to see you.
is outside our door.
Elijah, you must have come as an answer to our prayers. Our children are starving, sir. Can you spare a coin?
My good man, I am without money today. However, if you take me to the market, you may sell me as your slave and keep the money.
Heaven forbid!
Oh, that I can never do, dear Elijah. It is out of the question. No man, in fact, should serve as slave to another.
Especially you.
But your children are hungry. I can hear young voices crying out from inside. I implore you to think of your family first.
So the poor man agreed to put Elijah on the auction block.
Stand with me over there, my good man. Announce that you have a slave for purchase.
People, oh people, I have a slave to sell.
Just look at that slave. He looks old and frail, but he has a very wise countenance. I think the king would like him very much. Greetings, I am servant to the king. I offer 7 dinars for your slave.
Sold!
The man took the money from the servant. He bought many things for his family and was able to go into a trade. He prospered greatly and was charitable to the poor and never forgot the kindness shown to him by the glorious Elijah. Meanwhile, the servant brought Elijah to the king.
You what? You bought this ancient, puny-looking old man to be my slave?
If you will look into his eyes, Your Highness, I think you will see much intelligence and passion.
Well, I hardly think he can help build my new palace with a hammer or a nail or brick or mortar.
Pardon me, Your Majesty, I was once an architect. I can design a most exquisite palace for you.
A few days passed.
Slave, your plans are perfect. Now I must begin construction at once. Can you oversee the building of the structure?
Without a doubt, I can. But, Your Majesty, who would obey a mere slave? Free me first so I can supervise others.
Old man, freedom is a very precious gift. And you, I might add, are a unique and wonderful slave. However, I shall make a deal with you. Build my palace quickly and well, and then I'll think about freeing you. If you fail, however, you will be my slave forever.
Now, this threat did not bother our prophet one iota. Elijah, you must know, was able to simply disappear at will. However, he wanted to play by the rules and to earn his freedom in a righteous manner.
You must know that I will not be called upon to do anything wicked.
Indeed not.
That evening, Elijah prayed to God that the palace be built quickly and perfectly. Oh Lord, let me win my freedom soon so I may return helping the Jews in need. The next day, a large crowd assembled in front of the new and dazzling palace that had been totally constructed and furnished overnight.
How exquisite!
It is magnificent.
The king must be overjoyed.
Slave, the people are correct. I am overjoyed by your miracle. I am very grateful to you. Yes, I am.
So good. Your Highness, is there another task, or am I free? As you know, I am anxious to earn my freedom.
Slave, I am not anxious to free you, for I have never as yet met another person enslaved or free quite like you. However, a promise is a promise. Here's my last command. I have here a scarf. If you were to sell it in the marketplace, how much would you ask for it?
Well, Your Highness, It is a scarf of many colors and very beautifully woven. I would guess 2 gold coins.
Quite right, slave. However, you must take it to market and sell it for nothing less than 10,000 gold coins. That is my order.
I see. Your Highness, I will take the scarf to the market in 3 days' time. Farewell.
Then Elijah made a journey to the Garden of Eden and stopped at the tree of life. He gathered 100 leaves that had fallen from the tree and wrapped them inside the scarf. The fragrance of the leaves permeated the fabric of the scarf and gave off a scent that created a feeling of deep peace to anyone who neared it. Elijah left the garden and returned to the kingdom.
First, I shall pass out a leaf to every Jew in need of a cure for himself or his family. For by boiling the leaf in water and then drinking it, one is made well. Now I see I have just handed out the last leaf. It is time to sell the scarf in the market.
When Elijah spread out the scarf on an empty table near some crowded booths, its heavenly, peaceful scent drew a large crowd.
I bid 1 gold coin.
What a scarf. 3 gold coins.
Oh my, I want that scarf. 6 gold coins.
The king, disguised as a merchant, watched his slave fail at getting the right price.
Ha! Let me get closer to my slave. I'd like to see him sweat a little. What is that heavenly fragrance coming from the scarf? That was not there before. It makes me feel so peaceful. I could float on air. I must have that scarf. I bid 10,000 gold coins.
Oh! Sold! Sold to the merchant for 10,000 gold coins.
The two walked together to the castle gardens. The king removed his disguise.
Yes, Your Highness, I knew it was you who purchased the scarf. No one else in the kingdom has that much money.
Even though it's half my treasury, the scarf is worth every coin. How blessedly peaceful it makes me feel.
And I shall, no doubt, experience the joy of freedom.
Of freedom and of wealth. Take the money. The coins are yours.
Elijah thanked the king and departed. Everywhere he traveled, Elijah distributed every last coin to a poor and needy Jew. Truly, there never was such a man as our very own magnificent prophet, Elijah. The end.
This story is The Magic Ring. This story is found in the Midrash. It is adopted from Phineas Drum's retelling, This Too Shall Pass, in her book, The Hungry Clothes and Other Jewish Folk Tales.
And now for the magic ring. The great King Solomon had many gifts. He was handsome, wise, quick-witted, and rich.
It's good to be king.
He also had a marvelous imagination. One evening he was dining with 3 close friends.
I have an idea for an unusual ring. I wonder if it really exists.
What sort of ring is it, Solomon?
This ring has the properties to make a happy man sad and a sad man happy.
Well, I've never heard of such a jewel.
Maybe we should all try to find such a ring. I'm sure our generous king would offer a handsome reward to the finder.
Nothing less than the magical ring itself.
It would make for an interesting quest.
Good, it is settled. I will give you all 10 days to find such a ring. I look forward to hearing about your adventures.
So the three friends set out the very next day in search of a ring that would make a happy man sad and a sad man happy. The king's friend Mordecai found a very expensive jeweler in the center of Jerusalem. He asked the salesperson if she had ever heard of such a ring.
Well, I expect that if you gave a sad man a very expensive ring, such as this beautiful diamond, it would make him very happy.
That makes sense to me. I know I certainly would be happy to own such a gem. I cannot afford to buy it, but might I make a drawing of its likeness to share with King Solomon?
Certainly. I will fetch you some parchment and ink.
The second friend, Joel, found a jeweler in the outskirts of Jerusalem. Joel explained his quest to the shop owner.
How about this? Say I was a happy man, and I paid a lot of money for this emerald ring, for example. But what if the very next day I were to learn that the emerald was really glass, and the jeweler who had sold it to me had disappeared in the middle of the night? I would become very sad. True?
True. But is this ring an emerald or a glass ring?
It is glass. I keep it to show my customers how to tell the difference between real gems and fake gems.
May I buy it from you to show to King Solomon?
Yes, it costs only 1 dinar.
The king's third friend, Deborah, had heard all the same arguments that Mordecai and Joel had heard from the jewelers she'd spoken with.
Somehow, I do not think that what I have heard so far is what Solomon meant by making a happy man sad and a sad man happy. I do not believe that he was talking about the happiness or the sadness of a person being limited as to whether or not he became owner of a real gem or a fake one. I think he meant that the ring would change how the person would feel about his lot in life.
And so, Deborah kept searching for the ring long after Mordecai and Joel had returned to their homes. Finally, on the afternoon of the 10th day of searching, Deborah entered a small ring establishment in a narrow alley.
Yes, good lady, I believe I have what you were looking for. Take a look at this simple gold ring and read the Hebrew letters engraved inside.
Let's see. It says Gimel Zion Yud.
And do you know what they stand for?
Yes, indeed, I do. I shall buy this ring.
Yes, dear lady, I'll wrap it up.
That evening, the three friends gathered at the great king's dinner table.
So here is the drawing of a wildly expensive diamond ring that would make a sad man happy.
And here is a glass ring. If a happy man thought he had purchased an expensive emerald only to discover it was worth nothing, he'd be very sad.
I do appreciate your arguments, my dear friends, but alas, that is not quite what I had in mind. Deborah, dear, what have you discovered?
I give you this simple gold ring, Solomon. Read the letters and tell us what they stand for, please.
Let's see. Yes. Gimel, Zion, and Yud. And they stand for Gam Zaya Avor. And this too shall pass. And truthfully, I was a happy man before I read this inscription. But now I am reminded that my kingship and my friendships cannot last forever.
And sir, I would like to have the ring back. My mother is not well. I believe the ring would cheer her.
You have found out what I had thought existed only in my imagination. Deborah, the ring is rightfully yours to keep.
Now look around the table, friends. We are all smiles again.
This is a fine ring you have found, Deborah. A very fine ring.
The end. The Sword of Wood. This next story originates in Afghanistan and is retold by Howard Schwartz in his story, The Wooden Sword. It can be found in his book, Elijah's Violin and Other Jewish Fairy Tales. Enid has retold the tale from the wife's viewpoint, presenting The Sword of Wood.
My dear friends, I've gathered you together in my home to say goodbye.
Goodbye? Are you going on a journey? Are you moving?
You won't believe this story. It is so amazing. It doesn't even warrant a narrator.
So tell it already.
Well, one night last week, while my husband and I were eating dinner and singing the praises of God, there came a knock at the door.
I am a wanderer. May I come in?
So of course we welcome the stranger, and he starts asking us all kinds of questions.
Like what?
Like, why are you both so happy? And you live in a humble cottage, and yet how come you have enough to eat?
Did you tell him that your husband is a poor Jew who walks the streets fixing shoes?
And he believes in God. Your husband is very pious.
We told him yes.
It's a shame you two never had any children. Not that you can depend on children to help you in your old age.
It's better to put your faith in God.
May I come back tomorrow night?
Yes, of course. So the next day my husband takes his shoemaker tools and leaves the house.
Now I recall, the king put a ban on fixing shoes on the street.
What did your husband do?
He asked God for help. Then he noticed a man selling water from a pitcher. So he bought a pitcher and sold water on the street.
Did he earn any money?
Yes, the same amount he had earned from fixing shoes.
Thank you for welcoming me back into your home tonight. I was wondering how you were faring after the king's ban on street cobblers.
My husband told him that he had prayed to God and was guided to become a water carrier.
I see.
The next day, out of the clear blue sky, the king puts a ban on selling water on the street.
Yes, I remember that. I had to go to the well myself to get a drink of water.
Your poor husband. What did he do?
He prayed to God, and then he saw a group of men going into the forest to chop wood.
So he joined them.
Yes, and he made enough money by chopping that wood and then by selling it to buy our dinner.
I dropped in to see how you were doing after the king banned water sellers.
So I told him we were doing just fine, as my husband had joined a group of tree cutters.
Who is this wanderer? Why is he so nosy?
Wait. The next day, all the wood sellers, my husband included, were gathered up by the king's chief guard. They were given fancy uniforms and swords of steel in wooden sheaths decorated with jewels. They were ordered to patrol the palace.
Is the pay good at least?
It's a living. The problem is, however, the guards get paid at the end of the month.
Oh no! What did your husband do? Poor man.
He sold the king's sword and bought enough food for 1 month. Then he carved a wooden sword and put it inside the sheath.
Aren't you afraid the king will find out?
The wanderer came back again.
Yes. He seemed to enjoy talking to my husband. Well, my husband said he never worries about anything that has not yet happened, and that he continues to have faith in God.
You might have guessed by now that I was the wanderer who became so intrigued by the poor Jew's faith in his God. I desired to test that faith. Kings, you know, often disguise themselves as merchants or peasants to see how their people are faring. The next day, I told the gods there was to be an execution of a man who stole a melon from the palace grounds.
And the king told the chief guard that my husband was to be the executioner. My husband begged the chief to select another man, but he insisted that the king wanted him alone to carry out the act.
Good heavens. Your husband couldn't even kill a fly. He's so pious. What did he do?
What could he do with a wooden sword? I prayed silently for a moment. Then I announced out loud to the crowd, "Dear God, do not let me kill an innocent man. If he is sinless, turn my steel sword into wood and spare his life."
The crowd was hushed.
Then I removed my wooden sword from its sheath.
The crowd cheered. They thought that they were witnessing a religious miracle.
And I laughed out loud. What a wise, resourceful man.
So where are you going? You still haven't told us.
To the palace.
The palace?
Yes, the king wants my husband and me to move into the palace. My husband is to become a top advisor to His Majesty.
Such a clever, endearing man.
That is some story.
See? I told you it didn't need a narrator, just a strong dose of faith. The end.
We have come to our last story and our fractured fairy tale. I think you'll see what I meant when I say it is fractured.
The Brothers Grimstein and Little Red Riding Hood. Enid Davis is retelling a series of stories made famous by the Brothers Grimm. She's changing each story by making one character in each tale Jewish. Here is her Brothers Grimstein's version of Little Red Riding Hood.
Though our characters are but few, one of them will be a Jew. Woodsman, daughter, mother, Graham, maybe Wolf will be our man. Once upon a time, or as they say in Yiddish, amol is gewenen, there lived with her mother a young girl named Little Red Riding Hood. She was called that unusual name because her grandmother loved her so much that she had sewn a lovely red woolen cloak and hood for her precious granddaughter. One summer morning, Little Red Riding Hood said to her mother,
Mother, do you think I should bring some goodies to Grandmother's house today? We haven't heard from her in quite a long time.
Well, as a matter of fact, Little Red, I just received a letter from Grandma in the Morning Post.
She put her hand in her pocket and drew out a lavender-colored envelope addressed to her beloved granddaughter. Little Red Riding Hood took the envelope and quickly tore out the letter.
You read it, Mother. You can understand Grandmother's shaky handwriting better than I.
Her mother took the note and sat down at the kitchen table to read it. It said,
Oh, Billy, Dear, most beautiful, intelligent, lovable, darling granddaughter in the entire universe.
Reader, are you getting any clues yet as to who is Jewish in this story?
I'm very sorry to have to write this letter. I love you very, very much. Remember, it was your daddy's mommy who made you the red cloak and not your other grandma. Anyway, darling Red, I don't want that you should come to visit me by yourself anymore. Every time, and I mean every time, you come to me by yourself, you meet a big bad wolf in the woods, and every time you meet a big bad wolf in the woods, you tell him where I live. Now, for a smart girl, well, never mind. Then you go off to pick some verschlungene flowers, and he comes straight to my house in order to eat me up. I keep hoping maybe your father, God forbid, will come to visit me. So when I hear a heavy pounding on the door, I say, "Come in!" And guess what? It's not my only son. It's the big bad wolf. And before you can say Moshe Pupik, I'm history. History! Then an hour or so later, you enter my house, and you proceed to have the same meshugana conversation with the wolf. "Grandmother, what big ears you have!" I tell you, my Shane Madeline, if I had $1 for every time I told your mother that you needed to see an eye doctor, well, never mind. Before long, you have joined me in the belly of the hairy wolf, and we both sit there like idiots, hoping that a woodcutter, a real mensch if I ever saw one, will come soon and assist us. When I told my friends in Florida about my life here in Germany, they said to me, "Pearl, darling, that is not what is meant by assisted living. You must move from your house in the woods and join us in Boca Raton." So, my darling granddaughter, her mother, and my terrible son, I have to say this. I'm in Florida now, where I feel safe and sound. You must know, sweetheart, that at my age, I would much rather be in the mouth of the rat, Boca Raton, than in the mouth of the wolf. Your loving grandma, Grandma Pearl.
The end. A slice of rye, a chunk of time, our folktale show is done.
We hope you learned a thing or two. We hope you had some fun.
Don't go away. Please meet the cast, or else they might feel bluish.
And go and find a tale to tell, but make sure that it's Jewish.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give credit to the very capable cast and crew of A Taste of Rye. Now please hold your applause until the very last name is read, and the very last name will be mine. Frank Burns. Raise your hand. Henry Cooper. No, wait with the applause, please. Henry Cooper. Brad Davis. Sandy Davis, he's back there. Justin Page, Brad Rubin, Bud Rubin, I'm sorry, Brad. Doug Wild, Julie Amato, Beverly Bogart, Billy Harris, Diane Clairbout, Jay Wang, Karen Hubbard-Yakowitz, Enid Davis, Trudy White. Trudy, did you? Okay. And Irene Weinberg. We all had fun, and I know you did too. Thank you for coming, and may Elijah visit you this coming Pesach. And goodbye.
One last thing, and this isn't on the schedule, but I would just like you to know, and I would like to say that Enid Davis is one of our most remarkable women that we have. She has worked so incredibly on this show. I could not believe it. I assisted her, and I was so glad to be able to do it and get to know her and work with her, because she is a very special creature. And I just want you all to be very proud that we have her in our realm. Thank you, Enid.
And she makes it fun.
And her husband, Sandy. Oh my goodness.
I should mention that we're doing this again soon. Another version, it's called A Bite of Joy. It's going to be an East European mock wedding, Molly and Solly's wedding. On your program, you have the information about it. If you think you would like to join our cast, the audition is on May 13th, and we'll have different stories, and we will have a Botkin who will MC it. If you don't know what a Botkin is, he's an East European jester who told stories to the bride and the groom. So we're having a great wedding here on June 10th, which is 2 days before my 48th wedding anniversary. So come and join us for a bite of joy. Thank you, Diane, Julie, and Sandy. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you.